Hey guys, how's it going? It's Krista, and today I want to make a thank you card to say thanks for a lovely Easter. For today's card, I'll need a stamping tool, as well as Gina K's Wreath Builder template. Today I'm using the 3 3/4 inch template, and I chose this size because I know that I want my card to be 4 inches by 4 inches, and I also want to have a little bit of a metallic border around my card front. I'll start just by taping that template down and inserting a 3 1/4 square piece of watercolor paper into the template before setting the guide over the paper and securing that with a magnet. I'll be using Simon Hurley Create background stamp egg hunt today, and these little eggs, they just pop out, and there's also a strip in the middle that you can take out to create a border of Easter eggs if you want. There are 5 eggs in this background that pop out. These are the 4 that I chose. Just due to space, I wasn't able to choose all 5. I chose to place all of the stamps on the guide first to create a semicircle. I did this to make sure that all the stamps are the same distance from the center point on the guide, but also that each of the stamps, the center of each stamp, lines up with the center of the point on the guide. And when the center of the stamps are aligned with the center line on the guide, that promotes symmetry in the wreath. I found, especially with the egg stamps, if the stamps were off a little bit, it really impacted the symmetry of the final wreath. Once I have my alignment, I'll just close my stamp tool over and pick those up. I'll then remove the guide and place the magnet just on the watercolor paper. For the pigment of the watercolor pencil to transfer to the stamp, either the stamp or the pencil has to be wet. I chose to start by spraying the stamps, and I like to wipe off the excess a little bit. I found that if a little bit of the moisture got underneath these specific stamps, that they were more likely to slide around and lose alignment. Once the stamp was a little bit damp, I just colored each of the stamp with a watercolor pencil, starting with Peacock Feathers, followed by Picked Raspberry, Villainous Potion, and sometimes it happens that the stamp isn't quite damp enough. And once I've started coloring my stamps, I like to add the water to the pencil instead of the stamp. This prevents me from overloading my stamps with water. It also prevents diluting the pigment on the stamps that I've already colored. Finally, I'll come in with some peeled paint for the final stamp. And again, I'll just mist my pencil with some water instead of spraying the stamp. You could also dip your watercolor pencil into a little glass of water. And once I have the stamps colored, I'll simply close over the stamping tool and press it down. Once I'm happy with the saturation of the stamped image, I'll go ahead and rotate that. I like to find alignment by looking at the stamp closest to the hinge of the stamping tool and then just turning it around so that it's opposite. Before I stamp the other side of the wreath, I like to dry my watercolor paper with a heat tool. It prevents any accidental smudging of the stamped images. Since I have the egg stamps aligned in a symmetrical wreath, I want to take advantage of this and stamp another wreath. To start, I simply close the stamping tool over again, but I wasn't quite happy with the saturation of the stamped images, so I went ahead and sprayed the stamps with water again and came back in with the watercolor pencils to add more pigment. And again, once I have those stamps all inked up, I'll just simply close over my stamping tool and press it down. And if you look at the blue egg is on the left-hand side, and to find the alignment of the next stamp, I flip it around so that the blue egg is on the right-hand side. This time, instead of adding more pigment, I resprayed my stamps, closed my stamping tool over and pressed it down. And once I lifted up the door of the stamping tool, I realized that I had too much water on my stamps before I closed it over. And when too much water is added, you lose the pattern of the stamps, but that's okay, we can still save this. I'll dry the watercolor paper with my heat tool and come back in with the watercolor pencils to add more pigment, making sure that I add the water to the pencil and not the stamp. Even when adding the water to the pencil instead of the stamp, it is still possible to add too much extra water. To remove the extra water, I'll just come in with a piece of paper towel and wipe up the excess water. And since there's a thicker consistency of pigment on the stamps, it does bring back the pattern into the stamped image. And to clean my stamps, I'll just spray them liberally with water and wipe them down with a cloth. For the sentiment, I chose Thanks from Altenew Signature Words die set. And I wanted to give my sentiment a little bit of dimension. So first I'll cut 2 thanks sentiments from white 110-pound cardstock and a third from a pastel gold cardstock. Now that I have those die cut, I'll go ahead and add some liquid adhesive to the white dimensional layers first. Glue those together before gluing on the top gold sentiment. And again, just with some liquid adhesive, I'll add my sentiment to the card front. Using a scoreboard and a bone folder, I cut a 4x4 square of the pink metallic cardstock before adding it to the card front using liquid adhesive. If you have a square frame die or a nesting square die set, you can definitely cut out a frame to save on the paper. The sentiment for the second card I chose was Lawn Fawn Easter border die. And again, I'll cut that from some metallic gold cardstock by running it through the die cut machine. This die straight out of the die cut machine is too wide for the card front that I created. And to make that sentiment fit, I'll cut that down with some scissors, cutting off the tail of each end of the border, as well as making a cut between Happy and Easter. And then I'll just glue that down with some liquid adhesive. With the card fronts completed, I'll go ahead and adhere those card fronts to some 4x4 cards using liquid adhesive. And that concludes today's project. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.